So we're going to begin with your introductions. And so let's start with Chetna. And let me just introduce myself first. So this is Sara, Danial, and as a 9 to 5 person, I basically am an advertising and communications professional. But of course, I've been always interested with books and authors and literature. And I've previously worked with Liberty Books, and I've been publishing books before. So उस हवाले से I got in touch with Sabine, and then she's obviously been associated with Ananke for pretty much 2 years, for the past 2 years. So, and then I have been into books and literature as a side hustle. So, जब भी कुछ literature festival होता है, I'm always around. So, let's begin with Chetna. Chetna is a novelist. Hello, Chetna. So she's a novelist and she's a columnist at Hindustan Times, and she's basically also a lifestyle editor and obviously a senior journalist for a good number of years, for the past 25 years, I believe. And she's authored 4 books, where Gulmohar sagas are basically the ones that are really popular. And her major work has also been into climate change, and her latest book, Gulmohar, Under My Gulmohar, is primarily based in Himalayas. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then obviously as an author, she is associated with various literature festivals, which is Pune International Literature Festival, Chandigarh Literature Festival, and of course Ananke. So am I missing anything, Chetna?
No, you touched on the main things. Yeah. So I was in the media for 25 years. Now I'm a full-time author and a creative writing mentor at the Indian Institute of Mass Communication and other universities.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then, of course, we have Sajita Nair, and she's published 3 novels and also a collection of short stories. So basically, her work is primarily based with societal issues, the dynamics of the society, and her latest release is Grand Matriarch of Malabar, which is set in Kerala, I believe.
Yes, set in Kerala, right? Yes.
Right. So, and then we have Dinesh, who loves to write, and he's into magical realism. So today the topic is basically crafting strong female characters, and all of you guys have authored books that are based with strong female characters. So the first question that I'd like to ask all of you is how do you develop all these strong female characters, and how are they different from the male ones? Sajita, I'd like to start from you in no particular order.
All right. So I think now coming to when we're developing strong women characters, I think we, as a writer, I tend to look around a lot, and I try to also take inspiration from my own life. And then of course, apart from works by authors like Kamala Das, if you've heard of Kamala Das. She's also was an author based in Kerala, and she has written a book called My Story, and it is a very strong depiction of a woman. And apart from books, I take inspiration from my own life, and that is how I think I go deeper into the female psyche and try to understand how a woman thinks, because it is very different from how a man thinks, because we all would agree that it's a man's world and we are trying to make our voices heard. So I try to study the women around me and understand how they think and how they work. what their internal makeup is. And that's how I try to create my characters.
Right. Chetna, what about you?
Yeah. Hi. First of all, felicitations to Ananke and Sabrin and team on season 2024 of the Women's Literature Festival. And thank you to Ananke, Sabrin, and Readomania for having us on board. And hi, Sara, and nice to connect to you also and to my gifted fellow authors, Sajita and Dinesh. And now coming to your question, how we develop our protagonists. So I'll just give a brief, make a brief mention here. So my book, Garnet Under My Gul Mohar, so that has two very strong, female protagonists, and one is Dolika, and one is the Grand Matriarch, Bade Biji. And I will, just give a small analogy to show that, what they portray. So both the protagonists are like the two faces of the pocket mirror that we carry, with us. So one is the far view and one is the near view. So Bade Biji, is a lens, is a metaphor for the generation, which navigated the post-partition to the post-pandemic. And Lolita is the contemporary, generation of women like us. And she mirrors the, contemporary scenarios, the contemporary cultures, the contemporary social concerns. And so I, coming to the development of the characters, I would also share what Sajita said that yes, most of the characters in my book also are inspired from people around us, and so the Grand Matriarch Bade Biji is she's been inspired by all strong women of the generation we grew up with, our nannies, daddies, and aunts. So definitely, real life is in, characters are the muse, and even Lolita's, Lolita could be you, me, Sajita, anybody. So it is, women around us who inspire us, to portray these characters. And so it's their stories woven into maybe fictional settings and fictional context. But I would say that the characters are very real.
They're pretty much real, right? And then, of course, fiction is always something which is always inspired by everything that's happening around us. Dinesh, I'd like to ask, as a male author, how difficult was it to write a strong female character? Because to get into a mind of a female and then write from her point of view, from her shoes. So was it hard? Did you find it hard? Did you have to try a lot?
It was extremely hard.
I'm sure.
But I have a different spin to my female protagonist. So while she's an extremely strong character, she has a mind of her own, and she manages all the delicate balances of her decisions to whatever conclusion and impact. But the story, the book that I have written, has been written from her lover's voice.
Right.
So it's a second person narration of a lot of men in her life. So this could be her lover, this could be her husband, this could be her sons, and then there are a whole host of other characters which come in and go. So my character, she is not really the one who's speaking in the book, but all the other characters are speaking about her. And the idea to write about a woman character came because, when we talk about extramarital relationships, a lot of times it is based on the male characters, right? I wanted to explore that dimension with a female character. Uh, I wanted to look at the agency a woman could have over the decisions that she makes for her emotional and physical requirements, right? So we have a lot of literature about men exercising their agency. Uh, and the interesting and the challenging part was how to not build a caricature, how not to build an extreme portrayal which is unidimensional. So, so I think a lot of creative thought went into ensuring that there is a right balance and there is a humaneness uh, to this female character who's extremely strong, and she goes all against the societal norms to define her life the way she wanted it to be defined.
Right. So when all of you say that a lot of your characters are obviously inspired by the real women around us, whether it's nani dadis or relatives, friends, or anybody for that matter, do you think there's a tendency of bringing any kind of stereotypes into our, because the global south has the same kind of issues that women face? So, how do you manage these stereotypes? How do you counter those narratives?
I think, okay, shall I?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So I think what I do is stereotypes are something that we understand already. So when I'm developing my characters, I try and get that character out of the stereotype through the story. So so she may start as being underconfident, listening to a lot of people, and living more for the others than for herself.
Yeah.
Right. So these are some of the stereotypes. Women are supposed to be this and this, and they have been slotted. So women are to behave like this. They're supposed to laugh like this. They're supposed to talk like this, right? So I get her out of that. So that's why I like writing fiction, because it is so empowering to bring a woman out of the stereotype and then make her face the world. And then obviously it's not easy. She goes through a lot of hurdles, And so when I'm writing my characters, I like to put her in a lot of situations which are prevalent, and then come out with a new way of looking at things, a new opinion that she forms. So that's the way I go about it. I think in all my books that's how it has been the standard.
Right. Chetna, what about you?
Yeah. So I'll take the example of my first female protagonist, Lolita, to address this question. So Lolita is she is a climate crusader. She is a book blogger, and she's a sari holic, and much more beyond that. So when I was developing her character, it would have been easy, to stereotype her as a climate warrior, sort of, carrying placards about, the climate crisis and all. But I did not want to, do the stereotype. So yes, I totally agree with Sajita also on this. So there is, the whole development of the character is not to fall into the stereotype, and to make the character as natural as possible. So what I tried to portray was that she has concerns for the planet, for Mother Earth, for the climate, but she is not that slogan raising climate warrior. Instead, I would say that she is a climate optimist, and how she addresses these concerns which are close to her heart is by making sustainability a way of life in her day-to-day living. So, for example, even the saris that she wears, she's a sari holic. So, even the saris that she wears are, handlooms and fabrics which are, eco-friendly. So, so, uh, so that was how I wanted, not to stereotype her. And sometimes I feel, the stories of the grand matriarch or, Lolita, they are very universal stories. They are, the stories of nannies and daddies and, grandmothers all across the globe. Barebi, I think it's very universal in her appeal. And so is Lolita. I think so many of us women are doing a little bit, for the planet, for Mother Earth, for social causes in our own little ways. So in that sense, I would say that, my protagonists are very universal and definitely one does not want to typecast them. So the whole thing is even culturally, to I've shown my characters as more cosmopolitan, than being, representative of a particular region or, a particular culture specific. So they're very cosmopolitan in, their appeal. So in that sense, yes. So there is a conscious effort to steer away from stereotyping.
Right. So, Dinesh, what about you? Do you tend to stereotype a lot, or do you want them to come out of the comfort zone?
Oh, they have to come out of the comfort zone.
Absolutely.
So the characters, and while there is Frida as the main character, there are a whole host of other female characters. There is a Sushila auntie, there is Badi Bai, there is the son's mother-in-law, and then there's Urja. All of them are strong in their own ways,
Right.
Headstrong. They know what they want out of their lives, and they ensure that their dynamics with their male partners are set to manage those expectations from life that they have, right? So for example, it's so I have a character called Badi Bai.
Yeah.
And Badi Bai is the ayah of the husband, and she's brought him uh, from infancy because his parents were killed, and so she's the surrogate mother to him. And when she marries Alfie and Frida comes into Alfie's home, Badi Bai takes her under her wings, and then Frida goes on and has an affair. Now, Badi Bai could have been the main antagonist in the scenario, but she wasn't, because she understood somewhere where Frida was coming from, and she completely suspended her judgment. In that way, I think there was a lot of camaraderie in the female characters that I have in the book. Yeah.
Right.
So they did not have a value judgment across each other. There is Sushila auntie, who's always there to support Frida in her difficult times.
Right.
There is Girija, who is the wife of her lover, whom he leaves. Again, she could have moved around and kind of charge it to her destiny, but she doesn't. She just picks up her life and gets on with it. And I think one of the things that I think it is very, very important, whether it's a male character or a female character, is to gather up whatever misfortunes you have and be just rise above all of that. So that's the thought that I have used. I usually don't enjoy writing about weak, miserable characters. so the people that I write about are the ones who are slightly different, who are who have taken charge of their own destinies, and who are making an impact in their own lives. I think it's very important for an individual to be content with themselves and their decisions before they can percolate that happiness across. And I think while my Frida goes through a lot of disadvantage and turmoil, she always has a position, whether it's emotionally based or thought through, but she has a position that she takes and she lives by it, whatever the repercussions. And I think that's the strength of the character that I wanted to talk about.
Okay, so all of us are coming up with literature which is primarily inspired by the global south, whether it's the characters, whether it's the backdrop, whether it's the locations. So how do you guys bring diversity, and how do you guys have foreign characters in your books, and if not, why do you not have them? Do you feel that we need to address our issues more importantly, or how do you bring representation in your books and writing?
Can I come in first?
Yeah, sure, Chetna, yes.
Yeah, because I'm happy to say that I do have a foreign character in my book, and so that's a Turkish character. So, and inspired from a real life character.
Wow.
And so she has a role to play in the unfolding of the suspense saga. I won't go into too much detail. So I had to really work hard, though it's a kind of a cameo, appearance that the Turkish character has. But I had to really work hard on, how to depict her, from the physicality and, to her mannerisms.
That's what I wanted to ask. How do you familiarize yourself with their world,
culture, and how they are in their day-to-day mannerisms and life. So there's actually a very mystical story about it. So I'll just touch upon it very, very briefly. So sure. I had this in my mind that I want to bring in a character from the Mid East, and exotic character, and because the story demanded it. And now my dilemma was, I don't know anybody in that part of the world. Okay, so this was just an idea, floating in my mind. And believe you me that within a few weeks, I get a message on my WhatsApp. Somebody says that, can you just call back or message back? I need to speak about something. Anyway, so it was, an unknown number. I didn't respond for a while, but then I said, chalo, let me just check it out. And I, messaged back, and the person wanted to have a conversation about something else. And so I, connected with them. And so it was 11 o'clock India time when I, called them up. And so they wanted to discuss something. And so we talked about that. And I said, where did you get my reference from? I mean, how did you reach out to me? So there was some common, acquaintance, and they had referred them to me for some other work. And so we got talking about a lot of other things, and about a lot of spiritual, things also. And can you believe, at the end of the conversation, which started at 11 p.m. India time and went on till 4 a.m. India time, wow. At the end of the conversation, I had to ask, I said, your number looked a foreign number. So where are you from, And the person says, I'm from Persia. So wow. I was like, it was just so difficult to believe. So there I had my character right in front of me, So yeah, so the next few months went in, asking her little things. What is the food you eat? How do you dress up in your daily life? Where do you go shopping? So I wanted to kind of bring in that authenticity, to the
Right.
narrative. Though it was a cameo. So yes, I think my narrative is, in that sense, very global and very realistic also, because the portrayal is very realistic. And even culturally, I think very inclusive, even where Indian culture is concerned. Because there's a book club in the narrative, in the sub narrative. So the members of the book club are drawn from different regions of the country. So we have a book clubber from the south. Then we have a book clubber from Bengal. So in that sense, different cultures are represented in my narrative. In that sense, it was good fun actually to develop those characters also, because I have grown up in a very multicultural scenario. So I was drawing up on a lot of my friends and friends of friends, to develop these multicultural and cross cultural characters.
Interesting. So, Sajita, what about you? How do you bring diversity into your writings?
I usually write things that I know very well about, and because that although I have tried writing other characters, for example, I've written a Russian character, so to get to know the language and how they're how a lot of things you have to learn, right? So sometimes I step out of the comfort zone, but otherwise in my comfort zone I write about things that I know thoroughly well. And so I think that's the reason why I have written a lot about women in the armed forces and women serving in the armed forces. Yes, and also women who are spouses of officers, and how they live the difficult life. It's not easy, right? So I know this world very well, and I also feel that it is not represented well enough. So that's the reason why I write mostly about this. But apart from that, my latest book, The Grand Matriarch of Malabar, that is set in Kerala, and it is about something that I understand very well. That's about the matrilineal culture of the Nairs of Kerala. So again, I've been mostly operating in my comfort zone, but maybe in the future I will probably have more of foreign characters and others. Like probably it requires a tremendous amount of research. So yeah, maybe I'll get there soon.
It does require a lot of research. It requires a lot of life experiences and conversations
Exactly,
to go over.
Yes.
Dinesh, what about you? Because
so I do write across the cultures and the nations. My book, the current one, is around. It starts pre-partition days and it goes right up to the 80s. So there is an Englishman who is there in the beginning, who is the fiance of Greta, of Frida. So so there is this Englishman, and the things that you use to bring the specific cultural aspects are food, the sartorial sense, the typical behavioral patterns, their own folk stories and anecdotes. So you lean on some of these things. I have a Russian ballerina as one of the mates of one of the sons. So then there's that part.
That must have been a tough one to write.
It was an interesting one, but in my previous book, which was called East of Love, West of Desire, it was based on partition. And there is one character who's a journalist, who's an English girl. She's a journalist. She's trekking through India. Her boyfriend is a German journalist who's based somewhere in in Croatian war and all of that. So yes, it's for me, because also I live abroad. I interact with a lot of people from other cultures. It's slightly easier for me, but certainly it's so much more enjoyable when you try to write something which is beyond South Asian, but still authentic.
Still
So
localized. Yeah.
yeah, still localized. So yeah, that's the creative aspect of writing. You spin out things beyond your
Absolutely.
own experiences.
Absolutely. So, of course, what are the different kind of challenges that you guys, I mean, go through coming up with such strong female characters? Because in the global south, a lot of females are kind of repressed, and they are very told that's what to do, what to say, how to say it, how to, they're very docile. They come across docile. I'm not sure if they are really, but are these challenges, do you have to kind of unravel all these characters to bring out their true selves?
Can I go first now?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Sure. So for me, while that is a well-established fact, what you mentioned in terms of the repression and the lack of voices, and having to manage through some of the societal constraints, I think that's a well-established fact, and I
Right.
think that's the larger narrative. And therefore, what I try to do is not reinforce that. I bring
Yeah.
in female characters which can present an alternative, right? And they are not vagabonds, vulgar, or completely out of the whack. But what I want to talk about is within that framework, you can still have a very strong voice.
Yeah.
There will be repercussions, and if you are geared to manage those repercussions, you will emerge as a winner. And I think that's what some of my stories are about. Even the first book that I had written on partition,
Yeah.
it was a lot about the partition violence.
Right.
But within that violence, it's always people who emerge as winners, whether women or men. Um, and that's what I wanted to show, because the partition violence is very well documented. Uh, and it becomes very depressing if you read a lot of that. I wanted to give um, a view that beyond that, there were people. And it was the people who emerged as winners through their resilience, through their hard work, through their emotional strength, through their familial and societal networks. So I think it's important to present that side, which is more encouraging, rather than continuing to delve in something which is very well established.
Right.
I agree with you, Dinesh, there completely, because we don't want our characters to go back in time. We want them to look forward, think, look at the future, and
Absolutely.
see that they have opportunities, that they can come out of their shells, they can just be, right? And apart, maybe adding on to what Dinesh said, I also try to make my characters relatable, because
Yeah.
being in India, and I understand exactly how our society functions. So the first thing what I try to do is I try to get the reader to care for my character. That for me becomes very important, because once the reader begins to care for the character, I can take the character along and the reader along to better places. So
Right.
yes,
Right.
relatability is one aspect, and another thing is to have a story that is inspiring. So at the end of the book, when a reader finishes reading the book, the person should feel, okay, if so and so character has done this, I'll certainly be able to do this. So for
Yeah.
me, that
They
also
can
becomes
resonate
important.
well with the character and
Yes,
then connect
yes.
with the reader.
Right. So
Right.
that's how it works for me.
Great, great, wonderful. What about you, Chetna?
Yeah. So I do agree with both Dinesh and Sajita on the relatability, and I will say that since the last two books I've done are Gulmohar sagas, And Gulmohar is a metaphor of hope. The red hot hope, as I say. And so, yes, my stories are stories of hope. And though the narratives touch upon certain dark periods, of the times of the Grand Matriarch, my whole challenge was, how much is too much. So I had to be very careful of touching upon, as Dinesh also mentioned, the partition thing, of just touching upon the dark period without going too much into it. Because
right.
I wanted it to be a story of hope. And yes, since Bade Biji is a grand matriarch, with roots, Punjabi roots. So yes, the 1984 riots were also a dark period. She has, been a spectator too, and not just a silent spectator. She has played a role in that, dark chapter of modern history. So, but the challenge was, how much should I delve into it? So I have, just touched upon those things to show that, she's a gritty grand matriarch, that, she stood for her community and others who were hounded, during that time, but without going too much into, the 84 riots also. And the other, challenge was, as I think Dinesh mentioned, he didn't want his characters to be the kind moping around, So yes, the other challenge was that Bade has a, failed marriage behind her. But, I wanted her to show her as a happy character, I mean, she survived it all. She's seen it all. And so when she starts telling the story of her life, the younger generation feel slightly hesitant. They don't want to touch upon, her, failed marriage. But she is the one who shows, them that, the message of seeing the, silver lining on the cloud. So she is the one who tells them, don't mope about it. Don't feel sorry for me. She says, and she says it with pride. She says, I'm the only one in the family who has a French divorce. So, for her, she makes it a matter of something to smile about, that she's the only one who got a French divorce. So you have to read the book to know what the French divorce is all about. So that was the whole thing of, making it a narrative of hope, of, a narrative which brings a smile on your face at the end of it. While we, because it's a post-pandemic narrative, we do, navigate the choppy timeline. But both the protagonists, Lolita and Bade Biji, they Gulmohar is the inspiration. So the red hot hope on the black canvas of pandemic and post-pandemic. So yes, that was a challenge, and I hope I have managed to bring out that emotional arc of hope and positivity, in the narrative.
All right. So, Sajita, just kind of extrapolating how you connect with the readers, which reminds me of my another question that I wanted to ask. Have you ever received any kind of negative or positive feedback from the readers about, this is the kind of character that I resonate with, or oh, this is not the way that you should have written this character, or something of that sort?
Oh yes, I did. I did receive, especially after my first book.
Perhaps
criticism came from the press.
And how did you take it?
All the readers have been very kind. Yeah. So when I was criticized, my first book was published way back in 2010. So when it was criticized by the Outlook magazine, and it was my first book as well. So I didn't take it quite well, I must say. Although much later I learned that I need to let the book go, because once the
You
work
know
is
how they
done,
say once the author has kind of just written the book, it's not theirs anymore. It's for the
it's
readers.
not theirs anymore. Exactly. So I learned that the tough way, because I wrote to the editor there and I said, what kind of review have you, you know, she said, you're written about the army and there's nothing about wars. I said, I was not touching upon wars. I was trying to say how it is for a woman to fit in a man's world. The way she looked at the book was with a preconceived notion. Right. So I got in touch with the editor and we had a little communication going there. But then I realized much later that that was not the right way to go. So now I
I'm a literary critic myself and I criticize books a lot. So I can completely relate to this conversation.
No, but now I don't criticize. I mean, let them
take it with
see. They have a right to their opinion. Every reader has a right to his or her opinion, and it is theirs, right? Absolutely. So I have done my job as the way that I wanted to present the book to the world, and it ends there. And if people say good things, and people have, a lot of people have said good things also, which keeps me going. Obviously, I think writers require that quite a lot. So there are readers who have told me your book was so inspiring. I was able to relate to it so much, and it just tells me it's as though you knew me. It's as though you understood me, what I was going through at my workplace. So these things, when readers come back and tell you these things, it just keeps you going. You know that you have touched someone, right? Someone somewhere.
You made a difference. You've done your job.
So that keeps me going.
Right. Wonderful. Dinesh, what about you? Have you been bashed about your character?
So one of the things that I do, my basic motivation for writing is just for the fun of writing and telling stories. I don't have any other motive except the reader to have some good time enjoying the book.
Right.
So for this book, I was getting some good reviews all across. But there is one person who gave me, she's a friend, I know her. And she didn't write to me directly, but she gave the feedback on Amazon.
All right. Interesting way to go about it.
And she gave me
a feedback. Did not want to probably sabotage the friendship.
So she gave me a rating of 3 on the book. And so I read through it. And then I read through it because I was intermittently chatting with her also earlier when she was reading the book, and everything was positive then. So her feedback was that, I would have liked some of the characters to have a little longer life. So so I said, but there is a character arc you need to work with. You also have to work with the imperatives of what your editor tells you, that do not exceed between your manuscript cannot be between 300 and more than 300 and 350 pages. If you write beyond that, I'll chop. So I have to work with that consideration as well. And so long as I'm giving a logical conclusion to a character, and the character has a complete arc, then it should be all right. She says, no, but I wanted this character to have a little longer life. You have completely forgotten about this character. So my view was, I could write an entire tome on the two characters separately, but that's not the agenda, right? So I take feedback with a slight pinch of salt, because now it's out of my control. The book is out there. There is nothing I can do about it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, your feedback is very welcome. I appreciate it. I honor it. But it is what it is.
Yes, Chetna, what do you have to say about this one?
So coming to the feedback, actually, the feedback to the Gulmohar sagas has been very positive, and especially Garnets Under My Gulmohar. I think all my reviewers or readers, they've come back and told me that, they just, Bade Biji, the grand matriarch, reminds them of their, Dani or Dadi or whatever. So she's a very universal, grand matriarch, very progressive, And so everybody has come back with the positive feedback, and even Lolita. So a lot of 30 plus, 40 plus women, they write into me, or when they doing the reviews, they say they really relate to Lolita because firstly for the love of saris. So saris is something Indian women of all age groups connect to. So they feel that she's very real. She's a very everyday a person, and they have also connected to her concern for the environment, climate, and because I think everybody is trying to, all awakened citizens are trying to do their bit, and that is cuts across genders, men, women, all. So they have really connected to her as a character, both Badegiti and Lolita. So yes, relatability quotient is high for both Lolita and Badegiti. And now coming to some interesting feedbacks away from the usual, I would say that it was criticism, but it was probably a cultural thing that some readers, down south were not able to connect to bits of Amrita Preetham poetry that is there, which is there. Badegiti sort of, relates, and she recites, Amrita Preetham's poetry. So probably that's more a cultural thing that some, people could not connect to the poetry, bits in that. And then another thing, interesting feedback I did get was, again, I think a generational thing, that the first book, Gidda on My Gulmohar, had, it was written during the, lockdown. So it had, we were living that hashtag existence that time, everything was virtual. So there was a use of hashtags, in the narrative. So a lot of the senior generation, was not able to connect to all the hashtags in it. So I think it was more a generational divide. Otherwise, characters, everybody related. And yes, as Dinesh also mentioned about, the outcomes of certain, romantic narratives. So yes, the first book, Gidda on My Gulmohar, some people, we are so conditioned to happy endings. So the ending was a bit unconventional. So I would not give away the story, but some people wanted, a different ending to the romantic narrative. So that's the little bit of different feedback the Gulmohar saga has got, but otherwise high on relatability quotient.
Wonderful, wonderful. So basically, I think we're coming to the end of our session, and it was great talking to you guys. But it was great knowing you. It was great knowing your stories. It was great knowing your characters, and we'll definitely get in touch soon.